right, and we are back. We are back. This is season 2 of Lead TV. I'm glad to be back with you all again. How are you doing? Hoping that you're having a good, productive afternoon. Where am I coming from? I'm coming from a new location. I have relocated to a different state. I'm now in Woodbridge, Virginia, working out of the Pentagon and other places. But we're in a little bit of a crazy world today. Not saying that it wasn't crazy before, but it's a little crazier now. And I have the privilege to have a platform where folks actually tap in, participate in conversation, needed conversation. We talk about current events, we talk about crazy events, we talk about cool events. And today, I've got a duality of both of those descriptions with the conversation I have with Colonel uh, Shabeso Cook. I hope I pronounced his name right. So I hope you enjoyed today's discussion. It is making sense of the madness that we're going through today, and how can you, as a professional, kind of decipher through it all. And we're going to hear some good words from him, a professional communicator. So I hope you enjoyed, and here we go. All right. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to the man, the myth, the legend, Chevy. What's going on with you?
Hey Otis, hey y'all. Nothing's going on. I'm just sipping some tea. That's what I'm doing.
You getting all the teas, all the good stuff in. I hear you. I understand what you're coming from.
Yes, yes.
You I, your comment is hilarious, but obviously it resonates into a sense that there's a lot of tea that's being spilled, unfortunately. A lot of professionals in the arms, the professionals in everyday work and living have kind of lost their marbles, and they're doing things that is kind of violating a lot of hopefully communication rules that they probably should not have violated themselves. But I am, I'm appreciative that you've come in to talk with us today about how to essentially make sense of this crazy miscommunicating or purposely discommunicating. I don't know if that's the word or not, but world that we're in. So, first and foremost, before we get into that, for the folks that are first time seeing you on our discussion, can you kind of talk to us about your background and who you are and what you're all about?
Yeah, I can. I think it would make sense also, since I'm still active duty, I want to make sure that everybody knows that what you're about to hear from me tonight are my opinions. I represent myself. I am not speaking for the Army. I'm not speaking for the DoD. I'm not speaking for Tufts University or anything else there. And I am speaking for myself and from my own perspectives. And so you can understand where those perspectives comes from. It might make some sense for me to tell you, if you don't know who I am. I firstly am a father and a husband. Um, I get the lucky privilege of being with the same lady since high school. We've been together 23 years now. We've been married for 15 of those. And she has given me the opportunity to be a father of two kids. One's 11, born on the 4th of July, named London. One is 2, born about Thanksgiving. So apparently I only have a kid once a decade, and they got to be on a national holiday. So those two kids and that wife are important to this discussion, because when we're going to talk about communication and leadership tonight, it starts there. It starts in my home, and it starts, when things happen in society, in the media, wherever it may be. The first thing I need to communicate clearly, the first people I need to communicate clearly with are those within my home. So that's where I start all my communication, all my leadership. And that's important to know about me. The second thing you might want to know about me is there's a little sign behind me. It says Tufts University. I am right now in the process of a couple weeks away from defending my dissertation. The Army gave me a wonderful opportunity right now to study human development over the lifespan, and I specifically look at character development. So again, leadership is important to me enough so that I'm trying to, complete a terminal degree in it, which I should be finished here pretty shortly. The last thing there is I've already alluded to my military experience a little bit. I'm creeping up on 18 years of service. Um, and I commissioned from West Point just to kind of frame my mindset was not prior service. Um, and West Point taught me a lot about what it means to be a leader of character, what it means to be a communicator with character, and what it means to step in the fray when things go awry. And I believe a lot of my classmates and people before me and those that came after me and that are still going to go to the academy are all cut from a very similar cloth where when things happen, we want to move toward it and we want to be leaders of character, focused on things like duty, honor, and country to gain clarity in situations like that. Um, so I think that's a good kind of background sketch of who I am. I think finally I would like to also say, just as I just remembered, I'm also a nonprofit leader. So I get the chance to run something called militarymentors.org. We focus on elevating, educating, and facilitating mentoring for the military and beyond. And that mission is, and that thought process there is important as well because I'm not just speaking from the lens of being, a uniformed leader where people just listen to the rank that's on my chest. I can lead in a voluntary space and have been around volunteers, have been around peer leaders, have been around a lot of different spaces, up, down, left, and right, that have allowed me to get other leadership experiences, other character building experiences, other communicative experiences that I hopefully help bolster what some the things I can share for you tonight. So maybe a jack of all trades and not a master of any one of them.
I think you're specifically skilled. That's the reason why I'm reaching out to you. Well, I reached out to you, and that's the reason why I'm entertaining you, having you on this discussion that we're having tonight. You speak about character means everything. Character is important. Character development is important. Where exactly did we lose our character at this time? This is obviously, things obviously don't just happen in a vacuum. How can where was the breakdown of character of what exactly happened on the 6th of January, in your opinion?
Um, that's it. There's a number of ways I can answer that question, and it's a couple different unique takes, right? Some people would probably want us to define what character is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Someone's behavior, attitude, traits, maybe for some language. I like attributes a little bit more than traits, and thoughts over time in aggregate, right? Like I've heard a great quote that your character is the sum of all your decisions over time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to get into the funky, science of it because I don't think that's fair tonight. But what I will say is there are some people that believe they were being leaders of character last week with what they were doing.
Yeah.
Because I think they were, in my personal opinion, misled to believe that something dire was happening to the country and they needed to step in and step up.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not defending their actions. I want to be very clear about that. I just want to say that there are some people that believe they were on the right side of the tracks last week.
Mm-hmm.
I will tell you, in my personal opinion, the rioters that broke into the buildings were in the wrong place at the wrong time, doing the wrong things, and what they believed in maybe was misplaced. Now, Martin Luther King, and people have heard me say this on the record before, Martin Luther King has said that the riot is the voice of the unheard.
Of the unheard, yeah.
Right? Does this apply right now? There are a lot of people that thought they were being unheard last week, so they needed to go one more step, take it even further and riot. But I will tell you that I think the Joint Staff, Chiefs of Staff, the Army staff would agree with me, right, that the way they were trying to be heard was was nowhere, no shape or form, being full of character. So that's a long kind of response. But what I'm trying to illustrate is that sometimes when these things happen, people think they're in the right place and they don't have the long lens of history to look at them. But some of us could simply pick up simple documents like this one right here, the Constitution, or we could go back to a credo. The Army has 7 values. We could go back to a motto like I learned at the academy, duty, honor, country. And we could hold on to those values and then really, really assess what we're doing. And I think some people last week didn't assess what they were doing. So they let themselves be manipulated into doing something that was criminal for sure, violent, 100% positive, and in the wrong at the end of the day.
How does one wrap their head around the nonsense? I mean, this discussion that we're having tonight is about making sense of the madness. How does one make sense about what they saw and experienced and maybe fearful of in the future?
That's a great question.
Again, we can come back to it. We could come back to it if you want.
No. I'll address it in a unconventional way. Okay. Again, you'll hear me say a couple of times that there are some folks that don't think what happened last week was nonsense. And I think that's where these conversations must start in a lot of places. Now, I'm not saying you have to agree with everyone who's spitting vitriol in your face. What I'm saying is, if we automatically look at a person across from us who is disagreeing with our perspective and automatically denounce whatever perspective they have because it is different than ours, then we can never, one, be a leader. Two, I think it would be very hard pressed for us to ever close the space, right? Leadership is about being in the gap between chaos and calm, right? Being between conflict and compromise. Leadership is right there, and communicating between those two sides requires leadership. So it might seem like I'm speaking in metaphors. It might seem like I'm speaking from a place of optimism, whereas it may feel like someone else may be speaking from a place of pessimism. But Stacey Abrams said it best, right? Like, I'm speaking from a position of determination. And I'm determined to be a leader. I'm determined to be connected. So what I will say is this: if we uniformed service members can go across the water like we have in GWAT and be willing to come to the table with Taliban, Al Qaeda, or whoever else that may be extremists, and try to change their mind about planting IEDs, change their mind about how they view the U.S. and try to win, quote unquote, hearts and minds, how can we not do that here in the States? Right. Actions are wrong. Actions are criminal. Actions can be seditious. Actions can be treasonous. But at the end of the day, all of us are not lawyers. All of us are not attorneys. All of us are not judges. And from my personal perspective, I personally can't judge because I believe in something different that doesn't allow me to judge. So what I do want to do as a leader is try my best to understand, and again, be between the controversy and the clarity. That's where I lay the leadership perspective.
I like that. Between the controversy and clarity is where you lay leadership. I see someone actually left a comment. Let's go ahead and read some of the comments.
Sure.
And I will encourage everyone that's viewing our discussion, hey, leave a comment, leave a question, send some questions over, send some comments over, and we will post them on the screen and we'll talk about them. Okay, so we have one comment. I think this is coming from the African American Army Officers Group. And the comment is, I love Stephen Covey's simple definition of character. It is integrity and intent. It kind of resonates with what you were saying before. What do you think? So
I've read Stephen Covey stuff, and I would say that's a good idea there. The intent piece, integrity and intent is a very good way to look at it. I would also venture to say that we got to push what we mean by integrity and intent. Okay. A lot of people don't know the difference between integrity and honor, for example, right? But if you go back to the origins of it, you go back to the Latin integrity, integer, oneness of word and deed. That's where integrity comes from. That's different than honor. Honor has something more to do with your position, holding a position of respect, holding yourself accountable for previous actions, previous words. Intent, though, is an interesting one to look at. So one of the books I was going to talk about tonight was this, Say Anything. It's by Doug Crandall and Matt Kincaid. And they actually have a whole chapter here given about intent. And it's about positive intent. So if we're talking about character and really trying to understand where somebody is coming from with regard to their integrity plus their intent, I would argue that the intent has to be positive. So they got a chapter here on positive intent. Starts with this quote. If someone doesn't trust you, it doesn't matter how well you measure your words, the other person will misinterpret you. If someone trusts you implicitly, it doesn't matter how poorly you phrase something, the other person will assume you meant well, right? So with regard to character and one's integrity and one's intent, your intent can be off and you can be a person with integrity. And you would hope that someone would trust you. So even if you mince your words, they assume that you're coming from a place of positivity, which has something to do, I think, with your integrity. But man, if you're assuming negative intent, let's talk about, not our own character. Let's talk about another person. If we're assuming that they're coming from a negative space, then it just like the quote says, doesn't matter how perfectly they word themselves, you're still going to mistrust them. So what I hope we could get out of some of what we get out of tonight is, right, assuming positive intent, trying to understand, trying to reach across. We say reach across the aisles all the time. Let's actually do it. Let's actually close the gap, as Brene Brown would say, right? It's hard to hate something when you're close to it.
Some people may not necessarily want to close that gap. Some people may not necessarily want to, especially after years and years and years of being pounded and being told that, hey, they are bad versus us being good. Some people may not want to reach out and build that bridge. I mean,
yes.
What are the people who've been traditionally dissed on and disrespected? What are they supposed to do? Are they supposed to just let that off their shoulder and sing kumbaya? What is your recommendation?
So there's a piece of this which speaks to values that I hold dear, that talks about turning the other cheek and things like that. But I had some radical kind of ideas, some unconventional approaches tonight, and that was going to be toward the end. But we'll jump into it right here, right now, because it's important. And I'm referencing some notes down here to make sure I get this right. But I'm going to tell you that you need to keep your haters and negators. They need to be close. We need to listen. We need to trust me when I say this. We don't need to, if we want to talk social media, I am not a fan of kicking people or unfriending people, kicking people off of their connectedness to me. That's my practice. Hear me out. Hear me out. Here's why. And somebody can fact check me. Go back to my page in the last couple weeks, the last couple months, whatever, when I've had what I would call spirited discussions with folks, they're still connected to me. If I'm not connected to them, they actually unfriended me. I'm serious, because I just don't. And here's why. We all know how social media works, right? There's an algorithm there. You can make choices about who you surround yourselves with on social media. And if you continue to clip people out, your social media feed is going to start to look a certain way. I choose not to take that negativity out of my space because I need to see it. I want to see it. I want to understand the perspective. Here's also why. I aspire to have some type of competence and intelligence. Obviously, trying to go to a PhD program, right? Trying to get a terminal degree. There's a great phrase, and it's, it jumbles between Socrates and Plato and Aristotle, who actually originated it. But it's a phrase out there that says a sign of a person with great intellect is one who can hold two dichotomous ideas in their head at once. I'm a black man. Can I understand a white supremacist? Can I understand their perspective? At the same time that I have all my perspectives growing up in the South, with the experiences that I've had in South Carolina specifically, where it took us a long time to get the Confederate flag off the top of the state house. Then they just moved it to the front right in front of our faces on Main Street until it went away by Governor Nikki Haley at the time. And it took the Charleston shooting for it to go away. So that we're not talking about when I was 9 years old, okay? This was very recent. Can I hold those two things? Can I hold those two perspectives in my head at one time to try to understand? That's what I aspire to do. So I won't cut those people out. Otherwise, they're saying stuff that I don't know they're saying. And they're talking in circles that I can't inject myself into. Right?
You don't want to create an echo chamber, essentially.
Correct. So that's what I would say to the people that might ask me that type of question. I tell people all the time, don't cut. I mean, I have a really good friend who habitually, they're all about, hey, I need positivity in my life. Well,
they want to protect their peace. What if they want to protect their peace?
They do, and I'm fine with that. I'm saying there's a danger when you're cutting people off, so especially in social media, who don't have the same opinion as you. Then what do you have?
An echo chamber.
An echo chamber. And it doesn't matter how much you think you're right. I mean, technically, I think you can't really know where you stand until you see what's on the other side of the river. Right? I didn't really understand the extremist perspective until I got the chance to deploy and engage with folks in certain situations and try to convince them why they didn't need to build IEDs, or why they didn't, why are you doing these things, and why did they hate me so much? Or I was in DC at a poetry show of all things, and I had a woman. I was introduced. I was in the Army and stuff, and I had a woman in hijab come up to me and say, "How did you enjoy, or how did you like killing babies in Iraq?"
Wow.
And am I just supposed to get angry and go off on a tangent, or get violent, or something else there? Or am I supposed to try to understand where she's coming from? I'll let you figure out or decide what you think I did, but I will tell you we had a conversation about that. And again, I will all night long. This is what I'll do. I am not gonna be on a side. I'm gonna be a leader in the between. I'm supposed to a leader's character is about building connective tissue, bridging differences.
I don't know, man. Using your metaphor there, connective tissue, sometimes you may connect to some cells that will end up giving you cancer, man, that will destroy you in the long run. What's the point what's the point of giving energy to an entity, a person, a place, or a group of folks who don't necessarily have your best interest in mind? You may want to be that best centrist character, but if they don't really care, if ultimately they're just trying to gaslight you and screw you over in the long run, as described by those that you see who may look like you, who may talk like you, they've been screwed over by the same group. What makes you think that you're going to be any different? But before you get into that point, we've got some comments here. Let's go ahead and post some of the comments. Thank you for everyone joining in the discussion. We've got one from Miss Marla Hunter. She said, "That's where courageous conversations come in. It's a one day at a time thing." Hi, Marla. I hope things are well. She said, "I can agree with that. I guess it's one of your earlier points." Ms. Malika Muhammad said, "Agreed. I need to know who believes what." Hell, if you want to know who believes what, just probably pull away from the regular cable channel that you usually watch and maybe just hop over on a different cable channel. You'll get the real deal. But go ahead, going back to my earlier points that I was saying, making connective tissue with potentially cancerous cells. How am I supposed to play those mental ninja games to get myself comfortable at that point?
Experience. That's I think the number one thing. And I think, and there are going to be some things people have heard me say before that I'm going to reiterate because I think they're important, not before tonight, like in the last couple minutes, but things I've said in the past that I'll circle back to. And here's the thing. Leadership requires mental jujitsu. That's what it requires. Every formation we walk into, if we're a leader or if you're a business leader, every organization you walk into is not going to believe everything that you say, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what we are really focusing on, I think, are some of these more, when you say cancer, we're talking about really, really far. The people that are really, really negative, really, really far over there, right?
They're the loudest ones.
Yeah, they are, because they want to be heard. But then there's extremists on the other side too. So let's be fair there. Here's the thing. I rather every time you try to have an influential conversation, every time you try to be influential, which I want to define influence, but I'll circle back to it. Mm-hmm. There are three outcomes. You either get commitment, so they either listen to you and they're wholehearted with they're going forward with you, or you get compliance, which we'll all take. Hey, just do what I say. Mm-hmm. If you're a parent out there, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Just do it. Hey, wash the dishes, right? Mm-hmm. We'll take compliance. What we're discussing right now is we don't want the pushback, right? That last one. We don't want rejection. That's what we think. However, right? We think we just want commitment. We think we'll take compliance. We think we don't want resistance. I'm going to tell you something. You do want resistance because it's positional. Those are the three outcomes of influence. That's actually psychology. It's not something I made up. Mm-hmm. Okay. The fourth one that you won't find in a textbook or whatever is apathy. Okay. A person who is apathetic says nothing, cares little, right? Isn't on any side of the spectrum. I don't want that person. So I rather have the person who is resisting, because if they're resisting, they have a point and a position, mm-hmm. and that can be understood. It can be listened to. It can maybe even be moved. A person who is resisting can maybe shift up to compliance. A person then who is compliant can maybe be put in a position with things like social liking, to use one of Cialdini's principles. Social liking. Everyone else around here believes this stuff too. And maybe I've now changed my circle of what everybody around me is now talking to. And now I can be committed. So I actually want the resistance. I want somebody to be on the other end of the spectrum, because at least they have a positionality. Why play chess with only one set of the pieces on the table? Then it's not, we're talking about mental jujitsu or mental chess. You don't play it with just one set of the pieces. Mm-hmm. There's a position, and I want the position. I want them to tell me, hey, why you mad? The whataboutisms. I want them to do that so I can understand where they're coming from. And oh, by the way, get off of social media and get on something called a phone, right? You can like do one of these things, put up to my face, and I can talk. Right? And I've done, and people can fact check me. I've done that within the last week with certain folks that had different opinions than mine. So you see what I'm trying to say? I think it's important to understand another person's position. To go very extreme, if someone's like, well, I hate all Americans. Well, that's a very broad statement. What do you mean by that? Why do you hate Americans? Why do you hate all Americans? Oh, now then you start teasing it out. Oh, they actually only hate some Americans. So they hate Americans in uniform. Wow, that's coming at me real directly. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, let's go one more step then. Why do you hate Americans in uniform? And then you keep asking those questions, you get farther down the line, you realize, they saw some soldier back in the day that was from a different country even, that, did something unscrupulous within their family. And you can maybe dig and find and get proof or whatever you may be, and then actually show them that it was something else and it wasn't us. And this is what we've done for your community, et cetera, et cetera. I don't have to go deeper into that metaphor because so many of us have done that overseas. Okay, if that works there, why can't we do it here in these same situations?
So I guess the point of a lot of what you're saying is there's a reason and rationale for the madness that we're experiencing. There's people's experiences, people's uh, willingness to have these tough conversations is something that we should encourage, something that we should look forward to, something that we shouldn't cut off.
Yes.
But what about those times that you should cut some things off? You notice as you give me some information, I'm pushing back with you, and that's kind of going with the theme of your discussion. It's a little bit of the madness that we're experiencing. What about those times? What are some of those signs that okay, maybe I should not want to create that connective tissue with this person or this person? What are some of those signs?
Well, the signs may be pretty obvious, I think, right? If someone is trying to harm you or your family, and that can be in a physical space or that can be in a mental space, then it's probably, a foregone conclusion that you need to step away from that, right? A lot of us need to put our phones down, need to pause on social media, don't need to scroll as much maybe because it's hurting us in a mental way and sometimes in a physical way as well. Those would be the spaces when I would say you absolutely have to step away because you're not a saint and you're not going to save the world. And I understand those situations, and we need to be smart about those particular choices, right? For example, right, if you had a robust conversation on January 5th with somebody that was like, hey, come get on this bus and ride up there with me. I'm not riding on that bus. I have to continue this conversation, right? That's when rational actors step in and say, well, okay, I'm not willing to go that far, right? I'm not willing to go to prison with you, or I'm not willing to compromise my own character and integrity to get to that place. And that hopefully that makes sense for everybody. What I want people to understand through this conversation, though, is if you want to be a leader, we can't cut them off as soon as they show us some negativity, or as soon as they don't agree with our opinion, or as soon as they don't, for example, I'm a Black man, as soon as they don't support Black Lives Matter or something like that, or if they want to come at me from that angle. But let me try to understand where you're coming from first before I make that decision, whether this is a detriment to me, my family, my soldiers, the people around me, my mental health, et cetera, et cetera. Let's don't cut them off right at the beginning, because I tend to think that's not leadership. Now, if you don't want to be a leader in this stuff, you got a lot more leeway to step away. But I think if you want to be proactive, if you want to have and display character and its pieces like integrity, morals, ethics, honor, I think you have to take that extra step. You have to step into the fray. You have to step into the gap.
Got it. So we have some comments coming in, I think, that could actually add to the discussion here. We've got one from Miss Renee Thomas Patterson.
Okay.
She says, at times I struggle with the emphasis of bridging the gap and understanding others because the other side does not offer the same consideration. Interviews like this are important, but it brings back to focus us leaders. Our character is built internally regardless of what other people are doing. What are your thoughts on that comment?
Oh, that's great. And I know who she is, so I appreciate this particular perspective here that she's showing, right? The other side doesn't offer to listen. The other side doesn't also want to be a leader, right? The other side doesn't have the type of character that we're talking about. That's, again, I'm going to default to what my character says and what my leadership says I need to do. Yes, it's difficult, but I'm going to be in that difficult space. Let's think about it like this. Yeah, we're talking a lot about leadership. I'll bring it back to where initially I said where I learned the most about leadership, it's in my home. Okay. I am a father. Okay. If my kid does something out of character, am I going to cut them off? No, no. My mom would never do that to me.
Well, they depend on you, so obviously
Well,
you're
I'm
not
just
going to do that.
again. This is my experiences, my background. That's where I'm speaking from.
Yeah.
You know, my mom told me, like, if I ever got arrested, she wouldn't come and get me from the jail cell. Sure, but that's not cutting me off. That doesn't mean, oh, now you can never come and get a Thanksgiving meal. You can never come on, right? Like I could call her. And I was arrested one time in high school. I could call her and she would, listen to me, right? What I'm trying to say here is, I think when we get outside our homes, we tend to only afford that accessibility to. There are people in our families that are Democratic, Republican, all over the spectrum. We'll afford them the opportunity to go back and forth because they're family. But then when we go into the office or something, and some random person, well, I mean, they don't want to meet me halfway. They don't want to hear me. So I don't want to give them that grace. Well, I tend to believe integrity is about oneness. So if I'm going to give grace in my home to my child or my wife, right through the wall I live in a duplex. So this house is connected right here. If I'm going to give grace right there through the wall to the people who are next door to me, then it's got to extend. Integrity is oneness, right? Wholeness. You can't choose I want to show some integrity and some character over here because they're actually affording it back. No, tennis matches aren't played with one person. You hit the ball and there's not another person on the other side, the ball don't come back. Okay. Even if that's not a strong player on the other side, or a person that's cheating and putting some spin on the ball that ain't supposed to be and ain't recognizing the calls. Well, that's on their character. That's on them and their conscience and their guilt or whatever it may be way down the line. But I'm always extend the leaf, because I think that's what leaders do.
Gotcha. In the long run, what do you recommend as far as someone who may be close to radicalization because they've gone too far in the deep end? What are some signs that maybe you may be becoming radicalized, and things that you can do to pull yourself out of that?
That's a great perspective. That's a great question to think about and reflect upon. All right, so radicalization can happen on both ends of the spectrum. That's the first thing. So we're not just talking about one type of person here. We're talking about a certain set of types of people that can be on both the right or the left, Democrat, Republican, Christian, Muslim, whatever it may be. It can be all in between. Some signs. Everything around you is confirming what you already believe. It's called confirmation bias. You only look for things that'll further confirm that belief. This is right. I saw this so many times. That's kind of the first pieces. Fundamental attribution error. Right? Well, because I'm doing it, it's right. Because they're doing it, it's wrong. And everything they do is wrong. That's further putting you into your own space. Specifically with social media, if you start to see that every single person on your feed, every meme you see, everything you end up retweeting and et cetera, is always the same stuff, maybe time to pull away. But these were all self-assessments. And I really do think it starts there. You got to try to know self. Pull away one more step, though. Start to see how people are reacting to you. Hey, I saw that post the other day, and man, that kind of seemed like it was a little bit off. Like, what did you mean by that? If a lot of people in your close friends, your family circles, your work circles are starting to say that type of stuff to you, maybe we want to pull back and say, not everyone is super leftist, or everyone around me is, man, they're so far on the right. It's, why are they saying that? Let me take it one more step.
Hmm.
I personally, and this is a personal piece about me, I take criticism very critically. Always have, always will. And I've taken some psychological assessments that tell me why I do that. I'm very hard on myself. So when other people are hard on me, I take it very personally. But here's another reason I don't cut off negative people on my life. Because when people come at me and make me hurt that way, one of the first things I do is, was there any truth in what they're saying?
Mm-hmm.
Let me take a pregnant pause and see why they were saying that. Right? We automatically do it for positive praise. We automatically do it for someone who's reinforcing something we believe. Why not do it on the negative side? So that's how I would answer that question. Make sure you do all that self-assessment piece, but then take it another step and listen to what people are saying around you. Listen to how people are responding to you, especially those close to you. And when they start saying stuff like, man, you're drinking too much. Man, what you said online the other day kind of wasn't cool. What's that about? Then we need to, man, peeling back the onion a little bit and see. The
Like
other
slow
piece is
down.
look at your
Mm-hmm.
media too. Like if it's all kind of the same stuff all the time and you're not even willing to listen to CNN, Fox, the other side or whatever it is, man, treading in dangerous ground.
Trending dangerous ground. I hear you. Hey, I appreciate those words, Chevy. Uh, and I know you. The point and the subject of our discussion today is making sense of the madness. What is the madness that you see out there, and how can we identify? Okay, this is not right. Something isn't quite right about that. Let me be aware of what is essentially right and what is essentially wrong.
I think a lot of the madness is the emotion around so many different things. The emotion is what causes the madness. I mean, if we want to be particular about words, madness is about emotion. It's about anger. It's about temper. It's about, apparently online, it's about capitalizing your words when you type, right? Even though that can mean a whole host of different things. It's about emotion, which usually in a lot of times means anger. Okay. I posted on January 6th that it was the most angry and sad I've been in a long time. And that's the God honest truth. I was angry that people saw fit to go into one of our Capitol buildings through violent means, during a joint session of Congress, where they were going through a democratic process to certify our election results. I was angry on the one end because to me that's utter chaos and it was hard for me to piece together the sense of why they would be outside of those doors, bashing them in, saying stuff like, hang Mike Pence, our vice president.
Yeah.
Hang our vice president?
Yeah.
I was very angry because I've worn a uniform for some years, and I mean there's a flag right here, right next to me, against the wall. It's a couple in here in the room as well. Like I support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and have said that phraseology for a long time. But I was also sad that it had come to that point. That they thought those particular individuals thought the only thing they could do was go in there with zip ties looking for Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, third person in line to become president if the president and vice president were incapacitated or had to step down in some way. Sad. But it's usually around emotion. So I want you to really think about this for a second. There's a great quote in one of these books. Oh yeah, it's this one. It's How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. It says this is about anger and emotion. Control your temper. Remember, you can measure the size of a person by what makes him or her angry. So why was I angry? Because it's a big deal, right? Leaders should be angry about what happened last week, regardless of where you stand or who you voted for and all the rest of that stuff. You should be angry about our federal institutions being broken into and a riot ensuing where all of our elected officials need to be moved to safety, to include our vice president.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? But what I would venture to say, you should step away from that anger and try to be a leader about is when you try to have a conversation with people about why they believe it was okay or not. Okay, so hear me out on that one. Also in the same book, this guy, very famous, this book has been, read and reprinted many times. He also says, avoid arguments like rattlesnakes and earthquakes. And that's like 2 pages before that anger quote, by the way, as he's talking about how to be influential and connect with others. So while I think it is okay to be angry about what happened at our Capitol, when you start to talk to people, try to understand where they're coming from, I think you need to pull that back a little bit, because it's only going to get you a snake bit. And that's how you make sense of the madness, is getting in there and staying cool, calm, and collective. Now, I've been come at in the last week in a lot of different hateful ways. It always inevitably happens.
Yeah.
I was told a long time ago, though, if ain't nobody hating on you, they probably not loving on you either, right? Like if you're not being hated on, then somebody's not you're not really saying anything. So that's something to just take to bed with you. But at the same time, a lot of people have come to me, PM, text, call, whatever, saying, I can't believe how cold, calm, and collected you stay with all, what's being said on your page, or what's being said, what's being posted on your videos and whatever it may be. And it's because this is what leadership requires right here. Consistency, character. All right. Anybody who's been in a dangerous situation overseas knows that when something bad happens, where those followers' eyes go? Right to you. They want to see how you react. And you can be a million miles a minute in your chest, right? But what do you need to show? Smooth, calmness, passion, purpose, direction, direction, motivation, leadership. Oh, wait, there's a definition there that came from something I'm used to, wearing an Army uniform. So a little bit of a rant, so I apologize, but
it's all right. You're dropping dimes, just ding, ding, ding. I saw you. We've got some comments coming in from the African American Army Officers Group. One comment that I like here, it says, one of the things, well, I don't like, something I recognize, and I'll talk to you a little bit of a personal story too. It says one of the things that I think most military leaders have run into is the radicalization of our former soldiers. I recently, a photographer friend of mine that I know from years ago, who is also a veteran, I believe, she was there in attendance at the riots in DC. And then when I asked, hey, why were you there? She was feeding me some BS about, hey, I was just there to capture the moment as a photojournalist. But when you dig and you investigate and you see, okay, I see what's going on. And you read the comments and you're like, nah. You see that you're full of crap. It's just something that I experienced recently. And yeah, unfortunately, I decided to cut sling low, keep it moving. I didn't want that negative energy in my world. There's some other comments there. Go ahead.
So yeah, it's happening because there and it's not a lot of people scream fake news and stuff. Here's at least what I've been seeing, and it's been corroborated on multiple news stations, through multiple investigations, all the way up to including the FBI, that there are uniformed service members, former, current, National Guard, Reserve, all of the different types, all kind of different branches were involved last week. Because I think it really boils down to this. People think that the most segregated time, this is a famous quote, most segregated hour is 10
It's
to
church
11 on
hour.
Sundays, right? Is when everybody goes to church. There's two other times when we're super segregated too. And one of them is on election day, right?
Mm.
We are very split when it comes to these kind of, there's not a lot of independent people. There's a lot of people who are either a Democrat or Republican, and that's, very much splits over these uniform lines. And people can be, again, there are people who were in uniform last week that thought they weren't there in uniform. Okay. They are, the vast majority that I've seen have took their uniform off before they went up there, and took leave or whatever else it may be, even though that's still illegal. They just, they're so staunch in their belief that they didn't peel back the onion and really listen to their code of ethics, the oath of office, which, oh, by the way, has been the same since the 1860s, right? There's a gentleman walking a Confederate flag that everyone has seen, walking right down the middle of the rotunda. Right behind him is a picture of Charles Sumner. He's walking in front of Charles Sumner. Charles Sumner, from Massachusetts, representative, was beaten by a cane for his beliefs during the 1860s to stop the Civil War and his beliefs against the rebelliousness, and was a avid abolitionist trying to stop slavery. But oh, by the way, guess what else he came up with? He helped codify the current oath we have. Right, Charles Sumner is, one of the orchestrators of the oath we all have. So those folks that were involved, uniform members involved last week, completely, I think, forgot the oath that's been around since the 1860s.
So we've got some comments. Man, all these West Pointers with these comments.
Oh man,
comments
dangerous.
I know. But this guy right here is my best friend, Colin Smith. He says, how do we challenge traditional norms of the military in order to better serve our Black and Brown service members? And there's a second part, particularly in the face of DoD instructions against political speech. How do we challenge our leaders to stop treating racism as politics? Thanks, Colin.
Wow, that's an interesting question. It depends on how it depends on how you perceive DoD leadership. I mean, I don't know if people have seen this, but there's a report that came out in December that talked about the DoD's looking into racism and some of the challenges and issues we faced last year. So if you haven't read that report, first of all, go read that report. It's Googleable, and you can see what the DoD did and what policies they are putting in place to go forward. And I think we all need to be educated about what the DoD is saying going forward. I would also, just as a note of caution, I would go all the way back to last summer when the stuff was happening around George Floyd and the riots thereafter. I mean, I've seen messages just like I saw this week from the DoD, from the Joint Staff, from the Army, that were specifically denouncing the type of stuff that was happening, that were getting people riled up. So I want to err on the side of, let's be clear about our language, that the DoD, I think, is putting out programs, policies, and trying to do stuff going forward that will put us in the right place. Now, to step all the way down from those high, area secretary level, Pentagon level, 4-star general level, all the way down to where the rubber meets the road, soldier on ground, leader to follower, I will tell you this: the first thing we need to do is know where we stand with our support to people of all different stripes within our field. We can't just focus on making it better for Black and Brown people. We got to make formations better for all our people, to include those in the LGBTQ community, to include those people who are a different religious stripe of us, a different gender than us. There's a lot of work that needs to be done with regard to, and that's every day, with regard to making sure people are taken care of. And that's leader business. I don't think, in my particular opinion, and I'm in a community where very often I am the only West Point Black guy in the room in my particular branch or career field of RSOL. Sometimes I'm the only guy with those things attached to me. But I've rarely felt that while I've been slighted and while things have not been, great, and while people at times have confused me for being, oh, I thought you were E7. Why can't I be an officer? Right? I've had those slights come my direction. Those are individual slights that in the aggregate, I don't think are policies, right? So I think the business of us changing from every soldier is green to just use Army terminology is becoming to a place where we're trying to bridge differences and see differences for what they are and value that diversity, moving it toward being inclusive, and then trying to make everything equitable. That's what I would say. You can, I've always said this, if you find something wrong with the policy, you can grow up in the Army, talking just the Army, and become a leader and change or enact policies that you think will work for your soldiers. But the minute you start just focusing on those that look like you have become part of the problem. And maybe all of us don't want to be a general officer, so we don't want to get to that level and change it. Yeah. You can also enact something called writing your congressman, writing your local representative. Mm-hmm. Some people are scared of this. Why don't you write the chief of staff of the Army and say this stuff is jacked up? If you want to change the talent management task force, for example, why don't you write them and say, hey, out of BCAP, there wasn't a lot of women that got selected as battalion command. Oh, spoiler alert, that did happen last spring with BCAP 1. And the first thing Major General McGee did was take the authors of that article and put them on the talent management task force. So you say it can't be happening. If you say these leaders don't care about it, say something about it. And then when they invite you to talk to the chief of staff of the Army,
you're going to be on that table.
You're going to be at that table. Go be a leader.
It's kind of like, hey, I always wanted to have that discussion about race and what are we doing to encourage having that discussion at workplace or at home or whatever. I mean, we push and push personal courage, but many of us didn't have the personal courage to have that discussion. So I was thankful I did get a chance to talk to the chief of staff and brought that up. That live stream. It was awesome. By the way, we've got more questions coming in.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for that prior question, Colin. We've got one here from, and I'll try to pronounce your name. It says Babatunde Adelaja. Hopefully I said it right. It says, finally had a discussion about last week's events with my squadron commander and fellow year group peers. Today's conversation was so vital. It assured me that I had a great leader. Despite the fact that he's still unpacking the unfairness compared to BLM, he stated that he was also in disbelief and could no longer imagine such an event come to pass in this era. I think the other part, it says, sir, did you ever imagine last week's event ever occurring in this era? Thanks for the question.
No, I did not. I will tell you, I had a friend I spoke to who lives in the DC area who visited during Thanksgiving, and we were talking about the election, stuff we had seen in the media, and she told me she was straight up scared for January. And I was like, why? And she was like, well, something is going to happen. And, I felt like I tried to walk her back off of a cliff and was saying, well, no, this is, I think there's always been a peaceful transition of power, all the normal stuff. So I completely didn't think last week was going to happen. I didn't think we were in that space. I was wrong. And I will freely admit that I was wrong, which makes me also scared for the upcoming weeks and the upcoming months, honestly, because I thought, I'm only 40 years old. Right? I've only seen a couple of elections in my lifetime. I've only seen a couple of transitions of power. I've only been in uniform enough to serve under currently 3 different presidents. So, I didn't think I would see something like last week, but it did occur. But the day of, and then thereafter, I immediately stepped into the thing I keep talking about. People have seen, again, the day of, the day after, and since. I tried to step into a space of leadership, have a conversation about this stuff. I started speaking to, I'm telling you, I got the beautiful opportunity to speak to senior leaders in the Army, across the Army over the weekend, people who look like me, people who don't, about how do we communicate. I won't say who the person was, but there's a person that leads a very large battalion that said, I want to talk about this stuff. And this was prior to the stuff that we just received from the Joint Staff and the Chief of the Army, Chief of Staff of the Army. Said, I haven't heard anything from higher yet. I don't know how to address this stuff. I know my soldiers are talking about it. What do I do? My response was not, let's wait on higher guidance. And because we all knew that something was going to be said. We all knew that they were going to stand with leadership and with character. We knew that was coming. So I simply told him that, hey, be a leader. And then I gave him ideas about how to do so and some communicative techniques and some things to think about as we're going to have that discussion. And one of those things was, hey, you don't want the rumor mill and the specialist JAG and the E-Fuel Mafia to take control of the narrative, right? Get you and your leadership team together and let's talk about how we're going to craft a message together. Some people saw a video that we put out, Military Mentors. That's not my words that are in that video. Me and my team came together, did 20 takes on that video and 8 or 9 or 10 repetitions of the words to get it right, get it together, say something, get out there in the space and be a leader between the two sides. So that's how I would answer Baba Tunde. I didn't think anything like that was going to happen. And if things like that happen in the future, I'm going to be the same. My organization, I think, is going to attempt to do it the same way every time. Be in the gap, be a leader, show character, and help others find their leadership.
I see we've got some more comments, and then I have one other final comment, kind of bringing this to a close. Here's a comment I see in the page. It says, I think leaders have a responsibility to temper their emotions and those who they lead and those who follow them. It's a good comment. Very good comment. It resonates to what you've been saying.
I agree. Avoid arguments like rattlesnakes and earthquakes, right? And your anger shows what you get angry about, shows, you know, how big you are. And I'm not denigrating any. There's some more people out there that are more empathetic or more emotional, and there's nothing wrong with that. I just know, at least I can't say a solid no. I just have experienced in my time that when things go awry, they're looking for. Here's some research for you, okay? I can't help it, all right? I taught a class called Leadership in Combat. It's an elective course at West Point. When you look across the spectrum of conflict, from looking back at the Great Wars all the way forward to GWOT, when you interview followers of what they expect of their leaders, many people think the first thing they're looking for is courage on the battlefield. That is not the case. People are first looking for competence. Rational competence. Are you making the right decisions? Right behind that, people are looking for character. People are looking to see that you can make the right decision, but not only you thought about what hill to take, you thought about what door to stack on. They want to make sure you're not doing it for reprisal or just to get back at the enemy. They want to know if it's morally and ethically sound right behind it. The last thing they're actually looking for is something that most people wouldn't really think. Care. They want to see that you care. They want to see that you'll stack on the door with them. They'll see, they want to see that you'll put yourself in harm's way, or that you care after they come off the battlefield so they don't get PTSD or something. You put them in a position so they can have PTG, post-traumatic growth. We can get them the help and stuff they want. I bring all that up to say that, yes, Emotions and all that stuff matter. Leadership for certain matters, right? And they're looking for your competence. They're looking for your character. They're looking for your care. And if you can display those things, you know, nowhere in there were they looking for your emotionality, your passion, your fired upness. That's not what they were looking for. They're looking for your ability to have rational thought, it to be ethically and morally sound, and to show that you actually care about what's been going on and that you can commit to them when the stuff is happening. Nerd complete.
And so we have one final question here before we kind of close our discussion up. And
Okay.
Really good question. Well, this is more of a comment here. And it comes from Mr. Roger Pringle. I think he is a chief warrant officer. Roger Pringle. He says, great and healthy discussion, sir. I met you at Fort Knox when you participated in BCAP. I applaud you for taking the time out of your busy schedule for discussions, interview with my friend Otis. Well, I'm glad I'm his friend. I have another engagement in 3 minutes, but thanks. Hey, Roger, I appreciate you giving a quick shout out to Colonel Cook. Sir, is there anything that you really want to, I don't know, just kind of hammer home at the end, something that you may have missed during our hours-long conversation?
Yeah, if I could, there's a couple things here that I want to make sure I get off my chest, and then I'll cycle back. Just looking through my notes, making sure that I hit all the things that I want to talk about. Yeah, here's some more of those unconventional approaches. I talked. Listen, watch your echo chambers. Okay, watch the idea of who you surround yourself with. We're supposed to be the sum of the people around us. Really think about potentially keeping those people around you, especially in your social media feeds, who may have a difference of opinion, and address. You don't have to address them with just throwing, stacks and stacks of stats and different types of PDFs and links to things that show that you're right. Just hear them out. Maybe pick up the phone, offer them, send them a note in your PM and your DM, and say, hey, call me and let's have a conversation. If they're near you, go get a coffee. It's hard. Brene Brown says it, right? It's hard to hate something that's near you. So go get near. Here's another unconventional approach. If you really, really, really believe in what you say, go get published. Hear me out. There's a lot of us that are keyboard warriors, and I hope you don't take offense to that, but there's a lot of people that are just going to the Google, finding some stuff that they believe in, and sending it downrange. Take it one more step. Go get educated in a topic, really deeply educated, and then go through the vetting process of publication. Publication equals permanence, okay? People who are writing stuff that is being peer reviewed on these topics is what you were actually referencing sometimes for the sake of your argument. So if you really believe in it, if you want to be deeply knowledgeable in it, go get published so you can be vetted, so your opinions can be vetted. I've been lucky over time to have a number of publications, and I will continue to strive in that direction to do so. But that's one of the reasons I do it, is because I want my stuff to be out there, but I also want it to be vetted by other people, scholars, people who know deeply about what I'm talking about. So someone else can say that potentially I know what I'm talking about, as opposed to just my Twitter feed or my couple of characters that I typed in furiously with my thumbs on my Facebook feed. If you're serious about what you believe in, go get some education in it. I was blessed to have the opportunity to go get a certification in community change and social leadership. So some of the stuff that I'm talking about within this space is not just, because I saw it on CNN. It's because I went to get educated about it and wanted to get deep into it. I talked about closing the distance and keeping your haters. I want to throw up a couple of these books. Make sure you try to grab this Say Anything. Make sure you grab this if you really want to get into this stuff, right? Cialdini's Influence Principles. No leader can hope to persuade regularly or single-handedly all the members of their group, right? You need group cohesion, you need social proof, you need everything to work maximally in your favor. This gentleman will help you do that. This is another one that I have to reread all the time because I tend to overtalk, right? Joe McCormick. It's a great thing in here about passion and energy, right? Being all in, like being all in. So he says, remember that passion isn't always a sentiment. Let me go a little further. Mature professionals decide to communicate with belief regardless of how they're feeling. So regardless of how you feel, how angry you are, how saddened you are by things, leaders decide to step in and say something, right? If you can see something, you can say something in an airport with regard to a misplaced bag. You can do something when you see this stuff happening. I mentioned Kim Scott's radical candor tonight as well. If you want to build a ship, don't drum up people to collect wood and don't assign them the task to work, but rather teach them to long for the endless immensity of the sea. If you want people to come to your side of the perspective, don't say, listen, you gotta be liberal in this case because you're too conservative, ... No, maybe think of a bigger, broader perspective and talk about a future in America where our Sundays aren't so segregated, when our schools aren't so segregated, when our neighborhoods aren't so segregated, when our polling stations aren't so segregated. Let's talk about that vision and that vision of America and get them to believe in that through radical candor. And I think I already talked about art of influence, but this is what I'll close with. He says there's a difference between persuasion and influence. And I talked about this really early on, never defined influence. This is what he says. Persuasion is used car salesmanship. It's pushy. It starts with a P. We need to stop doing that. Listen to me or else. Buy this vacuum. Buy this used car. No. What he would say is you want to be influential. With this leadership business, all of this stuff we're talking about tonight, you want to be influential. Well, how does he define it, Chris Widener? He says, start with the N, I-N. Influence is something that happens within the other person. They have to choose to believe in you, your leadership, your positive intent, your character, integrity, honor, morals, ethics, what you stand for, okay? If you want to be influential, you need to start there. Start with you, and hopefully the words that come out of your mouth that are between you and the other person will help them make a choice and change, as opposed to you selling them something. I'm not trying to sell you anything tonight. I'm hoping what the majority of you do will pick up some of these works who are by other people who have been vetted, so you can see where some of my perspectives are coming from, that I'm not just, again, this stuff is permanent. Publication is permanent. They've been vetted. They say this stuff works. There's research behind all of this stuff. I invite you all to go do the same thing.
Excellent, excellent. Well, we've got one more comment. We got two more comments. This is another book influence right here by Mr. Smith. What's going on, Colin? He says, everyone, military or civilian, should read Loon Shots by Safi Bahcall. Do you have that book?
I do not. So it's getting written down. And he's going to get me in trouble, Colin, because I already buy too many books and have too many things to read. I do appreciate it. Loon Shots.
Right. Thank you, Colin. And we've got the final comment of the night. It says, thank you for the invite and for always finding a way to lead up. Can't wait to see you lead a battalion. That is exactly excellent. Thank you for the comment, Xavier. And so in closing, sir, I just want to say thank you as always. This has been an excellent discussion. As always, hopefully you come on and chat with me a little bit more in the future as I, fix my background up and we get this studio up and running again. And, looking forward to future discussions with you.
I appreciate it, Otis. I hope a couple people have taken away something tonight. You can find me. I'm the only Chaveso cook on the planet. You can look me up, CHAVESO, Cook. I'm gonna listen to you even if you disagree with me. If you ask me for a minute, I'm gonna give it to you. So yeah, let's all be leaders. I guarantee this. Just like I said in our message, leadership is a salve for even the most catastrophic wounds. Okay, I truly do believe that. So whatever happens in the coming weeks or the coming months or the coming years, I will tell you there will never be no need for leadership.
Mm-hmm.
So let's be leaders together, and I'm willing to walk that journey with you, whoever you are. Thanks, Otis.
Awesome. Hang out in the broadcast room. Let's talk a little bit more, okay?
Will do.
And so, in closing, we had a good startup for season 2. Chevy is always awesome to have a discussion with. He kind of influenced me in a point where, okay, I'm not going to be as quick to just cut off those who I think is bringing negative energy. There's an opportunity to learn from what they're saying. There's an opportunity to see a different perspective or a different side. I'm going to take that mindset and hopefully try to implement it in my adulthoodness. And as I say in closing, thank you again for joining me, season 2. I'm looking forward to, if you want to be a discussion with me on this channel here, on this place here, I'm always open to it. I'm always looking for that opportunity. And so in closing, as I always say, take care of yourself, take care of your family, take care of others. Bye now.